If you're interviewing for a product manager role or any job in tech, you'll for sure get a behavioral question. What is a behavioral question? So an example is, tell me about a time you had a conflict with a coworker and what did you do to resolve it? Behavioral questions are meant to help the interviewer understand your past experiences and your behavior in those past experiences for them to use as a predictor for how you would in the future perform on the job. So today we're going to go through some best practices and common mistakes I see all the time when people answer these type of questions. Hey guys, I'm Diana and I'm a senior product manager at a big tech company in Silicon Valley, California. I bring you the best tips to get into product management or tech and teach you how to succeed once you've made it. So again, what are behavioral questions? Tell me about a time you had a conflict with a coworker and what did you do? Tell me about a time where you had to lead a team without given official authority. How did you go about it? Tell me about a time where you were given feedback that you didn't necessarily like. What did you do about it? Tell me about a time where you had a disagreement within your team. What did you do about it? Okay, are you annoyed already? All right, I'll stop. You get the idea. 3 key themes I want to leave you with today. The first one is structure your answer. Please make it easy for us as interviewers. The second is focus on what you did and less on what happened. And third, answer the so what. So we'll summarize this at the end, but let's jump in. Okay, so the first theme is to structure your answer. First, let me explain why. Think about it. The interviewer's job is to get signal on whether you would be a good fit for the role that they're hiring for. While they're doing that, they're listening and taking notes at the same time to get a sense of that. So help them help you make it easy by structuring your answer into sections so it's easy for them to follow along and take notes on. Structuring your answer means breaking it into sections and explicitly calling it out when you've moved to a different section. So for example, if I were asked the question, tell me about a time I had a conflict with a coworker, I would say, so let me tell you about a time that I had a dispute with a coworker on my team who was the marketing manager. And you explain a bit of the context. The problem was, you explain the problem. What I did was X, Y, and Z. And lastly, the result of what I did was X, Y, and Z. Another great way to make the answer digestible is to number things. So if you're in the section of the things that you did, or what we call actions, number the actions that you took. So the first thing that I did was this. The second thing I did was this. The third thing that I did was this. So it's easy for them to grasp and again, jot down notes so that when they go into the debrief for your interview, it'll be easy for them to advocate for your actions and how you might perform on their team. Another tip to structure your answer is don't jump right in. So many times as an interviewer, I'll ask a question and I can see people immediately jump into answering the question even before they've gotten a chance to digest it or even think through the question. So here I recommend take seconds. Clarify the question, repeat the question, and ask an interviewer, can I take 30 seconds or a minute to jot down some thoughts and then share it with you? And jot down bullet points of key themes you want to convey. You don't have to write a whole essay because you're not going to have the time, but bullet points is enough to structure your answer. And people ask me all the time, Diana, but isn't it going to be super awkward, the silence? Sure, but I'll take 1 minute of awkward silence over 5 minutes of rambling any day. You can make it less awkward by giving the interviewer a heads up. You can tell the interviewer, I'm just going to take a minute to jot down my thoughts and then share with you. Is that okay? So the third thing under structuring your answer is to actually use a framework, basically sections of what you can talk through that you can have in the back of your mind to easily convey your answer. And that is the STAR framework, which a lot of you have probably heard before. STAR stands for situation, task, actions, and result. And it's a great and easy way to memorize some sections that you want to hit when answering behavioral questions. I'll give you one piece of insight that I don't see many people mentioning, which is how much proportion of your time you should be spending on each of the sections. So people have a tendency to spend about 50% of their time in the situation or the context section. And I actually recommend spending 25% in the situation section, 10% on the task or the problem, 40% on the action that you took, and 25% on the result that came from your action. So while we have the sections down, for those who are not as familiar, so let me quickly explain what you're trying to cover in the STAR framework. So the first part is situation situation. And here you just want to give a bit of context. What happened? So this includes which parties or stakeholders were at play, the conflict or the tension. And this is a great segue then into the problem statement, which is the task at hand. You then go into, okay, what did you do to try to resolve the problem with the actions that you took? And lastly, make sure you speak to the result of what happened from your actions. Hey guys, if this is helpful so far, I'd love for you to help out the channel by clicking the like button and subscribing to the channel. It really helps us create more content like this for you. All right, let's jump back. So the second theme I talked about is focusing on your actions and less on the context, which I gave a precursor to before. So a common mistake that I see interviewers make is they spend more than 50% of the time sharing context, telling the interviewer about every single detail, every single email that was written. Sure, it makes for a great story, but you only have 30 minutes or an hour to convey to the interviewer that they should hire you. And spending this time explaining every detail crowds out and distracts the interviewer from getting signal on what you did versus what happened to you. So for a 4-minute response, you should spend no more than a minute, preferably 30 seconds on the context to set up the stage. If we're not supposed to spend so much time on the context, what should we spend time on? The most important part of your interview is the action section. But here's a key insight. Don't just talk about actions that are in the job description. Rather, talk about what you uniquely did that may be different from any other candidate that comes into interview. So for example, I interview product managers, and a common thing on the job description is they lead research or they help enable research. And sometimes I get candidates that come in and just say, oh, I led research on my team to try to help them decide whether we should build feature X or feature Y. Instead, what you want to convey is how you uniquely did that action. So a great example that I've come across in the past. So we had a hospital client that we were trying to build a solution for. So how I did research was I spent 2 days in the hospital myself so I can empathize with the users and get a sense of what was most important. And I invited our engineers to join me in the 2 days staying at the hospital. You see how that's a non-traditional answer and really shows that the candidate is passionate about empathizing with the user because they stayed at the hospital for 2 days. Another way that you can show how you uniquely work is by prefacing your actions by your philosophy. So in the last example with the research, I might say something like, as a product leader, it's really important for the whole team, not just me or the researcher, to be the voice of the user. So what I do is I invite all of our team members, from the engineers to our legal staff, to join on these research excursions so we can all serve to be customer obsessed. A common mistake that I see, again, often, is people focus on what we did and not what I did. As an interviewer, they're not trying to hire your whole team, but they're trying to assess your fit for the role. So what you want to speak to is what you did on the team. So an example is, instead of saying, we brainstormed as a team to resolve X, Y, and Z problem, you can say, I brought together 10 of our team members and initiated and designed and led the brainstorm so that we resolved problem X, Y, and Z. The third and last theme is answer the so what. A common mistake I see people make is they forget to talk about the results of what happened. Definitely if the results were impressive, do not leave it out. If something like you raised revenue by 20% on your team, don't forget to mention it. And I think most people forget to mention it because they forget to think about it. A question I get all the time as an interview coach is, Diana, what if the results weren't positive? Well, that they were actually negative. Don't be afraid to share. Share the negative thing that happened and also share the learning that came from it. As I like to say, mistakes are lessons in disguise. And this is a perfect opportunity to show the interviewer that you're reflective as a person and that you can grow and learn from past mistakes. And if the result was neutral, find any slightly positive, even indirect impact. So for example, you can say, we ended up not getting that client deal by building this feature, but this feature helped us increase the total addressable market so that in the future, more clients would be interested in buying our product versus the competitors. Again, be results oriented. The second part of this theme is dramatize what happened. No, I'm not telling you to lie or stretch the truth. I'm telling you, help the interviewer understand the gravity of the situation. Help them understand the consequences if the problem that you took on went unresolved. Add in the tension, add in the conflict, throw in some emotion, and share your own thoughts in that moment of the story. Not only is this good for storytelling and keeps you memorable to the interviewer, but it helps you set yourself up as the hero in the story. And the last part of this theme is to quantify your results when possible. We talked about this in my last video on preparing resumes for tech, and the idea is you want to show a numeric number that represents the results. Whether it's something like grow revenue by 10%, instead of saying, I led a team to solve X, Y, and Z, you want to say, I led a team of 20 people to solve X, Y, and Z that led us to a 10% increase in efficiency. Do you see how that's a much more impressive answer? And like in my last video that I talked about, you don't have to come up with an exact number like 5.25 impact on revenue, but was it a 50% impact or was it a 5% impact? All right, now that I've shared my best practices and insider secrets as an interviewer, what do you do next? So when you finish this video, these are the 5 things I want you to do next. The first thing is find a list of behavioral questions for the company that you're interviewing for. You can find questions like that on Glassdoor or just Google the most asked behavioral questions. Second, when you get those questions, brainstorm responses to this question. Third, take those answers and put it into a neat structure like the STAR method. Fourth, optimize your answer using all the tips we just talked about. And fifth, practice delivery. This is one of the key parts. Just because you have good responses doesn't mean you can communicate it well. So practice the delivery first in front of a mirror to yourself, and after, mock interview practice with someone you most likely don't know, so you can get yourself a bit uncomfortable. If you'd like to see a video with me answering the most commonly asked behavioral questions, comment below to let me know what are the interview questions that you often get stuck with. Thanks all!